Okay, well, welcome everybody to week 2 of New Zealand Project Management Awareness Month. We had a great week last week with some really successful webinars. So today we're up to the 3rd of our series, and this is PM Basics. Before we get underway and we introduce you to the panel, we just have a few announcements to make. Slide is not working again.
Maybe just stop sharing and reshare, Sharon, if that works.
I know, I just tested it 5 minutes ago. It's so annoying. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so as a not-for-profit organisation, we rely heavily on our sponsors, so we just want to acknowledge them. We have Millpond, who are trainers for project managers, including the PMP and CAPM exams. We'd like to thank Quest, Apartments, who provide really good discounts for our members in their apartment hotels around the country, and Soda, who are the place to go for portfolio program and project management tools. Project Management Awareness Month is also being supported by Engineering New Zealand and the New Zealand Construction Industry Council, so we thank them also for the there are a couple more events once we get through Project Management Awareness Month in September. In October, you can now look forward to the combined Australia and New Zealand Virtual Project Management Conference, and I'm pleased to announce that registrations for that conference are now open, so you can go to their website. And then directly after that, in November, we have the National Project Management Awards. The nominations are currently open for that. We would encourage you to submit nominations for there's 10 categories of awards, and they will be presented in the end of November. We will announce the winners, so that's great. So without further ado, we'll hand you over to the moderator for today's event. So I'd like to introduce you to Kosam, the president of PMI NZ.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for the introduction, and welcome to you all. I hope you all get value from this presentation that we have today. So I'll just begin off by saying the original moderator, who was supposed to be Edward, is not feeling well today, so he's sort of given his apology, and I am the stand-in, so which is the first thing that I need to sort of impart to you, in that always have a plan B. So in this case, I'm the plan B, and I hope I will work out very well for everyone. So Edward was supposed to introduce the panelists, and I don't have anything with me, but the panelists know themselves. So I will hand over to the panelists one by one so that they can just give you a brief intro of who they are, and so that we will know whether to trust them or not. So I'll start off with David Petty. Hi, David.
Hi. Hello. I'm the General Manager of Project Plus. We're a niche consultancy specializing in project management. We focus on recruitment, training, and consultancy. We've got offices in Auckland and Wellington, and we're on all the government panels. Is that enough, Kosam?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much, David. The next person who is a panelist is Faiz.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Faiz here from PM Training School. We operate from Auckland, and we provide consultancy in project management, agile methodologies, and business analysis. And also, we conduct trainings for PMI certification in the same domains. Thanks.
Thanks, Faiz. And last but not least, Mike Roberts.
Thanks, Gautam. Kia ora koutou. Mike Roberts, so from Millpond, Director, Trainer, Project Manager. Do work up down the country. We go as far as Australia, Papua New Guinea and Fiji as well, offering, like Sharon said before, the PMP, CAPM certifications. We do introductory training around project management and a whole bunch of tailored stuff. So yeah, keen to share with you guys, as myself, David's and Faiza's experience around projects to help answer any questions that you may have today around the career as a project manager.
Thanks, Mike. So just a little bit of housekeeping in addition to what Sharon said. If you have any questions during the panel discussion, may you please type them in on the chat. We'll come to the question and answer session later. So we'll start off with each of the panelists talking about. In the meantime, may I ask that you mute your microphones while we are doing this so that we can hear each other. Right, then after the first intro, the panelists will go into a panel discussion for about 15 minutes. And then after that, we will open the last 30 minutes to the audience for any question and answer session that they may have. So I will start off with David once more to just give us a brief outline of his experiences and what he wants to share with us today. Over to you, David.
Great, thanks, Gautam. Really picking up on the subject of PM basics, I can see there's a few names that I recognize here today who are pretty experienced project managers, probably more experienced than me maybe. Well, definitely. But I think the focus of today, I was really looking at sort of helping people who are thinking about getting into project management and to just help them to understand what they need to do and what to expect. And I was really going to just cover off three things. First of all, is project management the right choice for you? The second one is just talk about
white. You do love a good white packaging.
Sorry? No, missed that. The second one really is pathways to get into project management. And then the third one is just talk very, very briefly about training, because I think that's something that we'll probably come back to later on. The first one is really, is project management the right thing for you? And since the start of lockdown, we've been getting a number of calls from people who've basically been forced into looking for a new career. Equally, we've had a lot of people who are just generally thinking, maybe I need to go and find a new career for myself to find something more stimulating and interesting. So it's really, does this really sound like you? Do you like to take responsibility? Are you resilient? Are you motivated to deliver? Do you have good interpersonal skills to engage with people? And do you have good leadership skills? If that sounds like you, then project management is really a really good step forward for you, and you'd probably do well and have a good career. In terms of skills that you need, you probably need to be good at planning, managing resources, engaging with people, teamwork, budgeting, resolving conflicts, planning. In terms of pathways, and I quite often get asked, how can I get into project management? If you're currently in an organization that uses project management, then that would be your best way would be to just progressively get more and more involved in the project, to join the project team, contribute to the project, and progressively just try and take on more and more responsibility. And you build your experience. Experience is really, really key. And I said we'd talk about training later, but the most important thing for you to develop your career is experience, and training will then help you to build on that, but ideally gain some experience first of all. Other sort of pathways into that, the standard one is get a job as a project administrator or project coordinator, progressively move up to project manager. There's then other opportunities to move into project management offices, portfolio offices, but it's building up your sort of career pathways. in many ways, it is better to get into a good organization that's going to develop you and to help you to develop. But then the third part of it is, that I really want to talk about in the intro, is training. I've already mentioned that experience will trump anything. And equally, if you're looking to get into project management or even move onwards, at some stage you want to have some training on your CV. That really shows that you're committed to your personal development, to doing a good job yourself, to being professional. But what you do need to do in that training is you need to basically build up your skills. You need to understand what the tools of the trade are and when they're appropriate to use them. You don't necessarily use them all at the same time. In fact, you probably don't. But it's really understanding what the tools are, what their value is, and when you can use them. And then once you understand all of that, you can then move forward and get more training to basically solidify your understanding and get some certifications added onto your CV, which will then help you to move your career forward. And that really was all I was thinking about sort of covering as an introduction, and just sort of see what everybody else has to say. And then I think it's time for questions after, I think. So back to you, Kosam.
Thanks there, David. Very good insights there on how to become and what to become and what project management is when you get there. So our next panelist to talk would be Faiz. Over to you, Faiz.
Faiz, you're on mute there, mate. There we go. Oh, you could jump. There we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, thanks, Kosam, and thanks, David, for giving good insights that how to choose a project management career and how it can help you to grow in your career. Today, I'm just going to talk about just one aspect of project management career and should you choose it or not choose it. And that is basically now as things are changing very quickly, very drastically, and you can clearly see that there is disruption in all the industries. So what's happening is like people are really looking for those people, industries are really looking for those people who are like journalizing experts or journalizing specialists. Here, basically, I'm talking about the people who are basically not jack of all trades, but they are like T-shaped professionals or M-shaped professionals, which have more than one expertise. And basically, that's the demand of the industry. That's what I just have seen. So if we look on our today's webinar, we can see that there are many participants who already have some experience and they now want to shift to project management or in this career. So it means that you already have one expertise. If you want to shift to this domain, that is project management, it will add, yeah, it will add a lot of, so it will add a lot of value in yourself. And at the moment, when we talk about project management in the industry, basically in mature industries, they are using some waterfall approach, waterfall or similar approaches, but you can clearly see that if your background is from IT or software engineering, many new approaches are coming and you can basically go learn about those approaches and start identifying that in which domain you want to go. For example, agile project management or hybrid project management. There are a variety of certifications, in fact, like dozens of certifications on all different domains, all different certifications, and there are basically Scrum, Maline, SAFe, so on and so forth. If you really want to go to Agile domain, then you can go and choose those certifications. Similarly, you can do some PMI certifications as well in this Agile domain to become like T-shaped professionals or M-shaped professionals, such as ACP or Discipline Agile, so on and so forth. Most important thing here I want to mention is like, I really want to listen from you. What are your needs? What you really want to become a project manager, so that I can answer according to your queries. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Faiz. Very good advice there. And before we go to Mike, just in case you are getting bored and you want to sleep, may you please type in your current profession. If you're an engineer, just say engineer, project manager in the chat section, so that we get an idea of who the audience is. While you're doing that, Mike is going to give us his part of the intro. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Kosam. And just another housekeeping thing. If you do have a webcam and you don't have it yet turned on, it'd be fantastic if you could please turn your webcams on. So that way, when we're talking to you, we're actually seeing real people rather than a whole bunch of black squares with white names on it. So I encourage you to turn your webcams on. We don't mind what sort of state of dress you're in. Now, just in terms of my intro, in terms of what I'm keen to talk about and share with you guys today, is a number of things, and very similar to what Faiz and David said. We are a bit of a unique industry. Unique, I think so, in the way that most people get into our roles as project managers. We are, by and large, an industry full of accidental practitioners, accidental project managers. People don't, the childhood, they don't say, when I grow up, I want to be a project manager. Unfortunately for us, those words aren't said. So I challenge you all as parents out there, if you are parents with young children, to just advocate the role that we are in and just wave our flag. So that's one of the things I want to talk about, and how it's changing in the more recent years, in the last 10 years, since the New Zealand tertiary sector have gotten to offering project management related qualifications, how that's changing where you're being qualified in project management before you have that much needed experience, which Dave talked about. I want to talk about the key element, which is so important for project managers, around our people skills, our emotional intelligence, and also the importance of creating networks and connections, because that will really open up doors for you for your first role, your second role, your third role, and your whole career as practitioners, because it's very much about who we know and the connections we create over our careers, which really help us out when delivering projects. So those are the sort of main three aspects I'd like to cover today.
Thanks very much, Mike. So now we are going to open up the discussion to the whole panel and cover all those areas that we're looking at. There are so many disciplines out there in terms of certifications and stuff, and it becomes confusing for those who want to actually become one of those. So what advice would you give to someone, say, who is an engineer or an accountant or whatever? Should they look at Agile as a starting point, or waterfall, or whatever you call them? May you please give us more information on that? Shall I start with David? What do you think about that?
I would probably start with waterfall, but it's more the tools within waterfall in terms of planning. I mean, in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about how Agile's new and it's not going to change everything. But Agile's been around for about the last sort of 25 years or so. It's just progressively being more widely adopted than it was sort of in recent times. It's really, I think you've got to have a good grasp of the basic tools, just so that you can run a basic project. And that's really where you need to start, is just sort of understanding how you can plan a project, how you manage risks, how you manage your stakeholder engagement, what reporting is going to be expected of you, and why you want to do good reporting, so that you've continued to get the support of your stakeholders and your sponsor. Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned, Kosam, the sort of the engineers and whether you do Agile or not, I had a quick discussion at a conference, PMI conference, a couple of years ago with an engineer, and said, well, you guys can't possibly be using Agile when you build bridges. And he said, but we are. He said we use Agile when we're in the design phase. Once we've got everything sorted, we then revert back to more sort of iterative. So it's sort of really, you need to know what your capabilities are going to be.
Thanks there, David. You bring in a very good point, which essentially is it doesn't matter what the discipline is called, it's the principles that actually matter. So you need to know the tools that make up that principle. So Faiz, we've heard of the terms waterfall and agile. Do they really exist in their purest forms, or is it something in between? What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously they are on both ends of continuum. If we talk about project management approaches, so waterfall is one end and agile is on the other end. They exist. If we talk about software projects, they are basically using agile since, for example, since 2002 or 2003, and they are not only using one method but variety of methods in their way of working. So I won't say that agile really doesn't exist in its purest form. It does exist. On the other side, waterfall also does exist, but for those mature industries, for example, civil or construction or manufacturing and so on and so forth. But what happened is recently, you can clearly see that software industry is the industry that disrupted everything. It means that they showed that their way of working is pretty good. I mean, agile way of working is pretty good. Either it's a disciplined agile or scaled agile or scrum methods or extreme programming, whatever we call it. They showed that, okay, they are of worth to basically consider. So what happened is like on one end, we have waterfall, on the other side, we have agile. We came together in the middle, and nowadays, most of the industries, for example, finance, accounts, or HR, or procurement, they start using more hybrid approaches. As David was talking about one of the engineer where they were basically using agile for the design, and later for the implementation, they were using waterfall approach. But if we talk about that, where to start from, I would highly recommend to start from waterfall. The reason is like it's pretty mature, it's very plan driven, very streamlined. You can clearly see that flow, that how we are going to start our project and how we are going to plan for all different bits of the projects, including scope, schedule, cost, quality, so on and so forth, how to engage and communicate with the stakeholders. But once you have a good understanding of waterfall approach, you must learn about agile. And basically that's one of the things PMI also recognize, and they are going to add a lot of bits of agile and hybrid into their current PMP certification, that is type of a flagship certification in this domain. So learn pure waterfall on one end, learn pure agile on the other end, and then basically see that how can you mix them together or can use them in their purest form according to your industry needs.
Thanks so much, Faiz. Good advice right there. Mike, do you have anything to add on what David and Faiz have just said?
Not too much. Just coming back to your point around knowledge and certifications. There's so many options out there, and there are approaches to delivering projects. So you need to know enough to know what you need to apply to your project. And sort of like what Faiz just mentioned now, and sort of what I will talk about later on is every single project will be different, and every single organization will handle projects differently. Every single industry will handle projects differently. So there's no, if anyone's looking for a sort of a black and white how to go about a project in a certain way, that doesn't exist. Like Faiz and there's a spectrum, and Agile's sort of one end, or actually no process is one end, and back from that is Agile, and they're very much control process, and prescriptive process is a more traditional approach. And most organizations operate somewhere in the middle. And if you're in a role, or if you're looking to get in a role to be employed as a PM, as an organization to manage internal projects, then the organization, if it's a mature organization, it'll have a process, and you just need to conform to whatever process it is. If you're working in an organization where, say, you're a vendor and working on client projects, then you're going to be in a situation where you're working with different organizations with different ways of working. And if you're in that position as a project manager, you need to be aware of all the ways of doing things so that you can fit your deliverables, your way of working, in with their, I guess, reporting mechanisms at their end, to make sure that if you're, say, more traditional, you can report more agile. If you're more agile, you can report more traditional. So you understand the sort of mechanisms, interfaces, to make sure you know enough to be dangerous, to add some value to your role. The issue is if you only understand one approach and not the others, or you don't understand Prince 2, but you do understand Agile, then you're going to limit your filter or your capability to contribute to that particular project. So we need to be sort of the jack of all trades in our roles and know enough to be able to speak the language, know the processes, know the benefits of doing one thing in a certain way over another, to make the right decisions with our teams to hopefully get the right project outcomes.
Thanks there, Mike. So it is a learning process, and you have to start from somewhere. And like Faiz says, starting from waterfall, which is more streamlined, it gets you to get a better understanding of what project management is all about. But that is not enough to apply to even one project, because there may be different aspects within that project that you would need to apply agile methods and the like. So if you start from somewhere, then as you build your career, you should be able to add more and more methodologies and frameworks to make you more versatile and marketable, and also efficient as a project manager. Otherwise, you can get stuck when things change, which happens a lot. So besides the basic project management skills, what other skills would be required to build that sort of career? So I'll just do a quick one before we open up to the rest of the panel. I'll just ask the panelists to just give us a few skills each, and then we'll open up the discussion to everyone. I'll just do another round. This time around, I'll have to start with Mike, going the other way around.
Thanks, Chris. Soft skills are so key to our role. Our level of emotional intelligence, as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, it's not whatever templates or processes or systems or tools we have that get jobs done. It is the people who work on our project, or people we report to on our projects. You know, us as PMs, we need to be able to manage downwards and lead upwards and engage upwards and manage external interferences. And it's so much about our relationships we create in our employers or our clients' organizations that lead to results. And if you can establish that relationship, that trust, where you establish that vision and people see the value of that vision and they can connect their personal motivations to that vision, then people will want to follow you, that their trust will be there and they'll want to be part of that project, and they'll give you their time. And if you got that, then you'll get results. If you don't spend the time up front establishing those relationships just by having casual coffee conversations with people around exchanging different views and opinions and what they'd like from you and what you'd like from them, then you're really missing such an important beat for that project. So it's hard. I mean, soft skills are the hard skills because we have all different personalities, but getting awareness of the different personalities. This is the importance of those sort of personality profiles like DISCs and Myers-Briggs, knowing what your strengths and what your weaknesses are versus knowing what others are, and knowing how to sort of combat your strengths with your weaknesses and whatnot to try and mold the sort of best possible solution to get this high performing team is so important. It's very hard to go on a soft skill course and come out the other side after a couple of hours of training or a day of training and come up with a new person. This stuff takes time. It takes experience to mold your personality. And in the day, it's all a comfort factor thing. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, as PMs, you need to be used to getting outside of your comfort zone, trying something new, seeing how it goes on. If it goes well, then let's keep doing that and let's learn from that. So looking to grow as people rather than as task-based project managers is a vital piece of our job.
Thanks there, Mike. Very good insights and good advice here. It's all about the people, because we'll be working with people and using those people to gain the result. Faiz, anything to add on what Mike said?
Oh, I mean, I fully agree with Mike, and obviously, everybody believes that soft skills are very hard to achieve, and you really can't achieve those skills overnight, but over time, for sure. What I did is basically. If I really want to divide that, what is really required for project managers or project team members to effectively perform on the projects, I can divide them into around like 5 to 6 different skills they should get. For example, leadership and people skills. Also, they should have good industry knowledge as well. And the knowledge about the industry in which they are working, business equipment, the standards, the procedures, and government and other legal requirements related to that industry, it's pretty important too for the project manager and all other project team members. Along with this, they should have a good grip on the tools. Either they are reporting tools, desktop tools, or management tools, project management tools, and all those software that are available. No doubt, things are moving from high-tech tools towards high-touch tools. But again, you should have a good understanding how to use those tools for effective project management. Along with this, where communication skills are very, very important, as Mike just said, I would say that your own personal development is very important. You should keep on working on your not only professional development, but also personal development, including, for example, punctuality, so on and so forth. All those bits basically add a lot of value in you as an employee.
Thanks very much for his very good insights there. David, any famous last words before we open up to the general galley? Oh, you are muted, David.
There's not many people able to mute me. I wholeheartedly agree with what Mike and Faiz have both said. I mean, if we had this discussion 10 years ago, then people would be told you've got to understand planning, you need to understand budgeting, you need to know all about risk management, and all of these good things. And you still need to know that. But the difference between a reasonable project manager and a good project manager is exactly what Mike and Faiz have been saying. It's all to do with your sort of people engagement skills, your relationship with your stakeholders, getting your team in behind you, getting the trust. And that really is what makes the difference between an ordinary project manager and a great one. And at the end of the day, as people are looking to move their careers forward, there's lots of people out in the market, and organizations are generally going to go for the great project manager, because people who have developed all of these good people skills will also come across really well at an interview. They stand out immediately when you sit down, and the first couple of minutes in an interview, the person doing the interview will immediately have confidence and think this person can do the job.
Absolutely. Thanks very much there, David. And it is also very important to note that more often than not, as a project manager, you don't have a dedicated team. So it means that each time you have a different team to work with for a different project, or even a different task. You may have a totally different team. And those teams will comprise people who are different. And these people are different, you need to get them to be engaged. And that is very, very important. And since you do not have any staff yourself, you should learn to know how to negotiate, how to persuade, how to get people to do stuff for you, and how to like you, so that next time you have a project, they would actually volunteer to be part of it. So it is very, very important that you become a likable person, and you can do as much as you can within proper limits to achieve that. So I'll now open up the discussion to everyone. I think we've got a few questions there. Right, so one of the questions there is, how do I get my first project? This is from Ash. Hi, Ash. How do I know I'm ready for that added responsibility and take the lead? So I'll just open it up to the panelists. Is any one of the panelists wishing to talk to this one?
I can kick this off. So it depends whether or not it's the first project within the organization you're currently working with, or whether or not it's a new opportunity within your organization. I think maybe Kosar mentioned this earlier. It definitely is easier to look for the opportunity within the current organization. So to give you a bit of background in terms of how I got into my role as a project manager, I was working for the Department of Stats, or Stats NZ. I was working there as a test analyst, looking after some big projects from a quality assurance point of view. And I had a bit of a hunger to get more responsibility, more authority, more accountability, and did some studies and got a job as a project coordinator to start off with, and then moved on to into a PM position. But because they knew me and they sort of have some confidence in what I could do, it wasn't too much of a sell for them to consider me for this coordination position. So my first role in the sort of project space was delivery space was looking after the rollout of a Windows 7 upgrade across all of Stats NZ offices. So that if you can find an opportunity within your current employer to just take on more and more responsibility, take your manager's problems, their concerns, and say, hey, look, leave that with me for a wee while. Let me come up with a plan with a bunch of people and come back to you with some solutions. If you're seen as the problem solver of your manager, then they'll quite happily pass you more and more problems. And the next thing you know, those problems are big enough to be projects. So you can do it either formally through, sort of performance reviews with your manager, and hey, look, this is where I'm going is with my career. Can this organization support me through that? And hopefully they can, and just start small and grow bigger. Or you can do it by stealth, by just asking for more and more responsibility, showing that you've got the goods, and next thing you know, you'll be managing more of other people's problems than your own, so therefore you become a project manager. If you are in the other scenario where you're looking to put your name forward for a role to another organization, and my thoughts are very much, I think what David just said before, is around you've got to sell your personality, because this being your first project, you don't have years and years of experience managing projects. You may have some local qualifications through a tertiary institution, or you might have, say, a global certification like Prince or PM or CAPM or something like that. We can talk more about those later if you like. But tell your employer that, look, I know what project management is. I've got the certification or the ticket to prove it. I'm just looking for that opportunity to prove to the employer that I've got what it takes. So you're really trying to sell them that you are motivated, you're hungry, you want to take that responsibility on and show that you've got the goods. And on top of that, if you can look for larger organizations, which are usually more mature, they have more defined processes, templates, methodologies, so you can sort of onboard yourself into a known process, rather than doing that at a smaller company where you've got to create the process yourself as well as manage a project. That's a lot harder. So there's look for those grad programs or those internship programs, or even some sort of a mentoring type program within the employer's business to help give you structure and confidence that you are doing the right thing. Because it's not until you start doing it that you know you can do it. And I do, I guess, challenge you to set the stretch objective and go for it.
Thanks there, Mike. I think you've adequately covered that one. The next question is from Alex. Alex asks, what about introvert PMs? Being the quieter, methodical sort who likes to master the tools first and use those to build relationships. Could be a weakness, but also a strength? That's the question. So, David?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to that. Hi, Alex. I know some really good project managers who are introverts. It sometimes takes you a while to realize that they're introverts. And I think everybody needs to have a really good knowledge of the tools, because you've got to gain credibility. If you're an extrovert, but no understanding of what you're doing, then you won't have any credibility with your team, any of your stakeholders. So you need to have a good solid foundation of the tools, but then you need to then have good engagement with people. Now, being an introvert or an extrovert doesn't really matter. In some ways, if you're off the scale as an extrovert, that could go against you, that people will just dismiss you and think you're just all noise and no action. So it's really just getting the balance, and everybody in many ways has to come out of their comfort zones to do certain things. So when you set up a project team, you're probably not in your comfort zone because you're dealing with a whole bunch of new people. As you get to know them, you become a lot more comfortable with them. And generally, as an introvert, and one definition that I heard of an introvert is that your preference is to work alone. Well, that may be your preference, but equally, you're still quite happy to work with people and you recognize the value of them. So again, it comes back to just getting the focus, understand what tools that you need. And what we've been talking about today is engaging effectively with people.
Thanks very much, David.
Thank you, David. That's good.
There you go. You get an acknowledgement. Right, so the next one is from Yogesh. I hope I pronounce your name correctly there. How important and relevant presentation skills are for a project manager? So this one, I think, Faiz, you can tackle.
Yeah, thanks, surely. Why not? Obviously, I mean, with a lot of other soft skills, presentation skills are pretty important as well. And when we are basically talking about the presentation skills, we are talking about where multiple people will be there and you are going to show that that can help people not only understand but also can facilitate their decision making. That's the purpose of any presentation. So it's always important when you are going for a presentation of your work verbally or with the help of some PowerPoint slides, some ads, some enablers, or you are going to do it with the help of your documents, I mean writing skills. That is also a type of presentation skills. It's pretty important that you should do a good planning, that what you are going to achieve out of your presentation and how you are going to help others. Are you are going to basically facilitate a decision or you are going to waste their time? So it's pretty important that when you are preparing for your presentation, you should plan it well and it should be pretty conclusive. And then you can say that this presentation is pretty good and useful. Otherwise, obviously, that won't be useful. And again, presentation skills are part of those set of soft skills.
Thanks very much, Dave. So it is very important to have a content that is tailored to your audience. So it depends on who your audience is, and then you need to make that content relevant to that audience. Otherwise, it wouldn't be useful at all. Right, the next question I have there is, was there a comment somewhere? Okay. Right, so the next question I have is from Edwin. Right, Edwin asks, what kind of formal certifications should project managers have in the infrastructure or construction industry? Anyone wants to take that up on the panel?
I can make a start, but very keen to hear what David's and Faiz's comments on this are. So based on my experience working in New Zealand, the construction industry hasn't been formally mature in recognising certifications in project management. It's much more common to hire people within construction who have spent time swinging a hammer to say, right, you swung the hammer enough, you now have enough credibility and knowledge to then manage a project. So construction, this is from my point of view only, I should say, is very much on experience on the tools first to get your job into project management. And this is one of those examples I was saying before, that we are largely built up our industries of accidental project managers, where we get time on the tools before we actually get training in it. So to answer your question though, to help give you credibility, is you need to give a certification that is relevant and applicable to the construction industry. And probably a bit biased in saying this, being a volunteer with PMI and running a company which operates training, a PMI certification that like the CAPM or like the PMP. So just give you a very quick high level view of those now. CAPM, CAPM Certified Associate and Project Manager, designed for those of you who have less than 3 years of actual project management experience. And anyone with 23 hours of education in or related to project management is eligible for that. With the PMP, it's the more advanced certification. You need to have at least 3 or 5 years experience managing projects before you even get to that. But both those certifications test your knowledge on what is globally recognized as best practice techniques and processes and tools for delivering projects. So you can apply them to whatever country and whatever industry you're working in. So based on that, I would suggest there is value in getting the CAPM or the PMP working in construction.
Yeah, thanks there, Mike.
And also just to add,
Faiz, you wanted to add?
Yeah, and just to add that if you talk about suitable certification for the construction industry, again, waterfall methodology or approach-based certifications or you can say plan-driven certifications such as PMP or Prince2 or CAPM, they're pretty useful for this purpose because like all the tools, all the software that construction industry project planners and managers, they are using, basically they are developed based on plan-driven approaches that are, certifications are PMP, Prince2, and CAPM.
Right. David, do you have anything to add?
Not much other than one of the things that was mentioned earlier is basically use whatever framework your organization uses, your employer uses. And a lot of the construction companies in New Zealand that do use good project management look for certifications in CAPM or PMP. Some of the smaller organizations use Prince2, but it's really whatever is going to suit their project.
So maybe on that, if I could just quickly add a second, if you're seeking to achieve a role in a certain company or a bunch of companies, just go and knock on their door and say, look, I'm keen to lead projects with you guys, whether it's now or in the future, but what is it you're looking for in terms of criteria eligibility for becoming a project manager within your organization? And they might have adverts that you can look at today that are listed in terms of looking for PMs, and they might seek out a certain certification. Or actually, if they don't ask for certifications, then just say, look, how can I become more eligible for your role? Ask the question. And they can always either not answer your calls, or they'll give you a whole bunch of immense value on those particular organizations you're targeting.
Absolutely. Thanks there, Mike. So just to add a little bit on that, we will have a dedicated webinar on project management in the construction industry. So if you go and look at the series of webinars that we have, we will cover that topic in detail in that webinar. The next question there is from Leslie. The question is, what are the concerns, issues of team members who work under PMs about PMs? How do PMs effectively address these concerns? Shall I start this with David? I think we've been around for quite a while and seen a lot of these things happening.
I think it just comes down to people within the team have to understand each other, talk to each other, engage with each other. It's an issue within project management, but equally it's just an issue in normal life. Yeah, I don't really have any other advice other than just talk things over, understand what the issues are, understand what people's expectations are.
Thanks, David. And what do you have to add, Faith?
Yeah, I fully agree with David. Basically, it's a very context-dependent question. So always think about the problem that needs to be resolved instead of like taking conflicts to the next level or a personal level. So important thing is resolve the problem.
Thanks, Faith. Anything to add, Mike?
Yeah, I think just to answer that question around what are the key concerns, it's too many meetings. The PM always wants to organize a meeting for something. So try and, as a project manager, maybe try and hold back on the number of meetings you've got. Can you do it fortnightly instead of weekly? But to come back to the crux of the underlying issue there is you can get a lot more respect and trust from your team members if you can see things from their point of view, so you've got a bit of subject matter expertise and you can sort of relate to their concerns and issues, but also just ask them for their thoughts. The worst PM is the PM who makes decisions on behalf of their team without engaging them. And this is not just project managers, this is managers and government, organization head of departments. If they make decisions without consulting their team, then the first thing the team's going to do is like, oh, that's a terrible idea, I'm not bought into that. If you ask someone for their opinion and say, look, here's a problem, guys, we need to resolve this together as a project team, what are your thoughts? Then that will establish that relationship and that will immediately establish the trust. And I can tell you from personal experience, allowing time up front to do that in the beginning will really make your job as a project manager just so much easier.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. And sometimes it also works well for you to have regular meetings with your team and making sure that you're up to date with what they are doing and their concerns, rather than waiting until it's too late and there's so much to cover, then it becomes very difficult to manage.
Just have a section on the end of every meeting you have. Just say, look, guys and girls, any feedback on the project itself, any feedback on me that I need to be aware of. If there's something that's not quite swimming, or you've dealt with a PM in the past who's done something really, really valuable for them, then ask for it and get that sort of that advice given to you, so then you can adapt your method of delivery rather than just going with your normal approach that you've used, tried and true over the years. Always look for opportunities to ask for and evolve yourself as well.
Absolutely, and that is where those soft skills come in to play. The next question, yes, David?
Oh, sorry. If you're using Agile, in fact, it's more Scrum rather than Agile. One of the key procedures is having a retrospective, which is at the end of each Scrum. You basically sit down as a team and discuss openly what you think of the way that well, I'm not phrasing this the right way, not what you think of other people, but how you think that something might have been done better by some people, whether it was just the way that they behaved or engaged with people or approached their work. And that is a formal part of Scrum that is meant to be done every 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Thanks there, David. So open conversations are very important, because if people are used to speaking their minds, then they won't have anything bottled in. But if they cannot speak their mind, then they'll still have those concerns and they'll become a bigger concern later. Right. So the next question there is from Ali. Ali asks, what would be the key factors in moving from a project coordination role to a project manager role? I'll start with Faiz. What do you think there?
Yeah, so Ali, when we really talk about project coordination and coordinating of different activities as per the plan, so basically my understanding is like what is missing is like planning aspect. So project coordinators, they really don't involve into that much planning, but what they do is like as per the plan, they coordinate all those activities and keep an eye on them. So if you really want to move from project coordinator role toward more project manager role, you should have like a very high level system level view. You not only know about project coordination, but you should know that how to plan for your project and then how to execute it and then monitor and control it as per your project baselines. So you are in the middle, you are following a plan, but you really don't know that how to develop the plans, what tools could be used, what techniques could be used. If you have good understanding of those tools and techniques for planning, and on the other side, you have a good understanding of monitoring, controlling, and especially change management, then you will have much broader view, much system level view, and you will have much more options to change your role from project coordinator towards project manager.
Right. Thanks there, Faiz. Would you like to add something there, Mike?
Yeah. And again, different companies, different industries have a different version of a coordinator versus a project manager, Ellie. But essentially, part of it is around, if you, and I'm sure you are hungry on taking on more responsibility for around customer engagements, then that's obviously a great sign to your employer that, right, here's Ellie. She's eager for more accountability and more involvement in these sort of conversations. So from your point of view, and obviously I know you, it's around getting more around the upfront engagements with these clients and maybe some of the contract negotiations and get more involvement at that period of it. It's taking a lot more ownership around the budgets and reporting on actual costs. This is a budgeted cost to make sure that from the client point of view, they're fully aware of what's going on there. Is it a time thing? Not so much. I think it's more a capability thing and a hunger thing. I was a project coordinator for 1 year before I moved into project manager. I've known project coordinators have been coordinators for 5 or 6 years before getting into project management. I think it really comes down to people's personal drive and wanting to show their employer that they've got what it takes, and look for some sort of mechanism where you've got that sort of support or structure, or maybe, sorry, I should start again, have a defined goal of what it means to be in that new role to compare to what it means to be in the current role. And for those, that gap there, understand what sort of support you'd like from either your employer or an outside party to give you confidence that you're doing that new stuff equally as right. Because it does vary from organization to organization, but I think hunger and a thirst for growth is one of the main drivers there.
Yeah, that's very interesting there, Mike. And the terms are always interchangeable. Some organizations call project managers project coordinators, and some call project coordinators project managers. So the name itself doesn't really matter, but it's the responsibility that you need to look at. I've got a very interesting one for you, David. This is from Feman. The question is, given the post-COVID situation that we see ourselves in, with the displacement of staff from traditional office settings, has there been any trend in requirement and evolution of specific PM skills? If yes, what are they? How has PMI worked and responded to this? So in part, you can answer that, especially the first part about the COVID stuff.
Yeah. I was talking to a project manager during lockdown, and I said to him, "How are things going?" And he said, "Fantastic." And I said, "Oh, that's good. Why?" And he said, "Because everybody's at their desks. Nobody's going to the gym. Nobody's going out for coffee. I can get hold of people. I can pin them down. I can understand what they're doing." It comes back down to what we've been talking about all morning, is good engagement with people. And you can do that via Zoom or the telephone or email, just as much as you can face-to-face. Equally, if I go back a couple of years, I was talking to a project manager about one of the problems she had in a ministry in Wellington, and she said, "I had to get 6 people to sign off on a document in 1 day." And she said, "I was chasing people into lifts and getting them to sign it in the lift." And that, again, comes down to engagement and needed two-way engagement. But I think with COVID, project managers are excelling. They're carrying on doing what they're best there to do. In terms of PMI NZ, I know you didn't ask me to reply this, but I think this series of calls this month is really good, it's really worthwhile. It's generated a lot of interest. I'm interested to see about the virtual conference. I don't know how they work. We'll see how that goes.
Thanks there, David. I will just answer briefly on the PMI stuff. From the PMI global perspective, they've created a number of accessible tools which are free. One of those is Snippets, which looks at very little tidbits of information that you can access at a time. The other one is called Navigator. So Navigator sort of maps your career path from where you are to where you want to be and what you need to get there. So all the skills that you need, all the certifications that you need will be part of that. So it's like a whole career mapping tool. There are other webinars and other accessible material that you can get on projectmanagement.com. So there's quite a lot of stuff there that PMI is doing. So from our chapter perspective, we have created this series of webinars to make sure that we cover all aspects of project management so that you can If you want to transition from one part of project management to another, there's always a webinar for you that you can attend that will give you specific information.
Kosam, can I just add to that? If you're working remotely, and I've worked remotely in different jobs for about 6 or 7 years, there's some specific skills that you need to learn to run good meetings with your team. If you're running a meeting with a project team, you don't want to have, and Mike said it before, you don't want to have meetings for the sake of meetings. And some managers can feel that they can't control what's happening because they can't see everybody in an office all the time, and they get quite nervous about that. So wanting to check in all the time, you need to have quite a flexible approach, and you need to trust that your staff, so you have a meeting, have a clear plan, and then let everybody go off and do their thing without sort of overly checking in on them is really important. You need to run meetings that are engaging. So one of the things that you can do to do that is make people turn their cameras on. And we've all done it. You've sat in a meeting, you've turned your cameras off, and you've gone off and done something else, and nobody's actually listening, but they've signed in. So if you want a really engaging meeting, have less frequent meetings, keep them very specific and to the point, and make them interactive. So one of the good things is a tool like Zoom. If you've got a bigger team, you can have breakout rooms and have smaller groups discussing a point and come back and keep people engaged in the meeting is really some new skills. It's not just having a meeting for the sake of having a meeting and have everybody bored.
Excellent, thanks. Okay.
Sorry, final point on that is just when we're all working remotely, we lose the opportunity for the niceties and the sort of pleasantries that we have. So be very wary of the fact when you make a phone call, you obviously making a phone call for a purpose or a meeting for a purpose, and you get straight to the point and you get onto it. You lose that element of connection. So try and still have just 30 seconds or 5 minutes at the beginning, just, how's your weekend? A nice little segue about what's going on in your world, so you know what people are currently, what their state of mind is. But also, because we're limited in what we can do, what you guys can see with my face and my hands, we lose a lot of our communication capability in virtual settings. So please remember to try and tell more stories in meetings, give people the purpose of the meeting, the context, so you got that platform to work on. Don't go straight to solution mode because you get lost. People get lost. So walk them through a journey.
Okay, thanks there, Mike.
You can add the meeting, open the meeting, say 15 minutes beforehand for the more social time, and leave it running after the end of the official meeting for people who want to connect as well. So there's all sorts of strategies that you should really adapt to for working remotely.
Sure.
Right, so we seem to be running out of time there. I think this, what usually happens with panel discussions is they get more heated as time runs out. I'll just have one question from Rituraj, which will just require a very quick answer. A professional from the healthcare industry or customer-centric industry, what certification is recommended? Faiz, what would you recommend there?
Yeah, so if you really want to talk about healthcare projects, where a lot of engagement with the stakeholder is going on, and you are really managing projects, obviously PMPR KPM is the way to go. But if your role is a bit different, you are more towards like analyzing your business, their strategies, their objectives, and preparing some business cases for your organization for healthcare industry. And you are more towards like ensuring that the projects that are being offered are going to achieve organizational objectives. In that case, any certification in business analysis domain would be helpful for you. So it totally depends that what's your current role in the organization and where you really want to go in future.
Right, thanks there, Faiz. Right, so we have run out of time, and we'll try and answer some of those questions, and we have the answers for you on our LinkedIn page. So watch out for that on our LinkedIn page. Just visit our LinkedIn page and become a member there. It's open and free to everyone. So we will try and answer as many questions because there's quite a number of them there. And I see there are also a lot of thank yous from the audience to the panelists. So it seems as if we have done a good job. Thank you very much, dear panelists. And thank you very much, Sharon, for hosting us. I'll hand this back to you.
Yes, just to reinforce, big thanks, and also to you as participants for being so interactive with your questions. You know, it is a really valuable series. Just a reminder, there are plenty more as we go through the month. So if it's just sparking your interest in project management, certainly register for the upcoming events. We have recorded this session and we will send it out. So if you want to refresh some of the things discussed today, we will get that out to you in the next couple of days. But thank you very much, everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you at some more of our webinars throughout the month. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.